Hello, how are you? Did you know that the early hours of the morning are actually the time of greatest cardiovascular risk during our day? It's during this time that there are more dangerous spikes in blood pressure, heart attacks, and even strokes. And what's most interesting is that this can happen even in people who already take medication for high blood pressure. I'm going to tell you why. Because the problem isn't solved just by taking a pill, by taking the medication. Some things you do in this first part of the day can negatively impact your blood pressure. And why does it fluctuate so much? Stay until the end because you won't want to miss this. Before we start, I want to ask you if you struggle with blood pressure. How is your follow-up with your doctor going? Has he already prescribed you medication? Is he still waiting to see if you can control it with lifestyle changes? Tell me down below, how is your follow-up going? I would love to see your comment. Remember to like the video, that's super important to me. It shows YouTube that you support the channel and trust my content. And if you know someone who has blood pressure problems and is having trouble controlling it in the morning, share this video. Let's help more people. There's something important that almost no one explains for those with high blood pressure. Our bodies don't function the same way all day long, right? Blood pressure naturally changes throughout the day and during the night. During sleep, our bodies should, or at least should try to, enter a state of internal rest. The heart should work more slowly, the blood vessels need to relax a bit more, the heart rate should drop, and blood pressure should become more stable, usually decreasing. It's as if the body takes advantage of this period of rest during the night to slow down its engine. And this rest is very important because it protects the heart, the brain, the kidneys, and the blood vessels from this continuous wear and tear that we end up experiencing every day. You just have to try to make a comparison, right? Imagine a pipe receiving a very high water pressure 24 hours a day without any moment of rest. Over time, that pipe will suffer more wear and tear, right? With the blood vessels in our body, something pretty similar happens. The problem is that when we wake up, our body actually does the opposite, right? The body understands that it's time to turn on the machine, to activate the body, get us out of that relaxed and restful state, and start the day. What does it do? It increases the alertness hormones, like cortisol and adrenaline, and stimulates the activity of the sympathetic nervous system. The sympathetic nervous system is what puts our body into alert mode. It speeds up the body so you can get up, walk, think, react, start your morning routines, work, get your life in order. In metabolically healthy people, this happens in a controlled way. But for those who already have hypertension and even some complications from hypertension, like hardened blood vessels, comorbidities such as diabetes, abdominal obesity, systemic inflammation, people who sleep very poorly, or are under a lot of stress, this morning spike can become more exaggerated. And that's why the first hours of the morning are the most dangerous of the day, right? And they've been widely studied. These first hours of the morning, they are the ones with the highest incidence of heart attacks, strokes, and dangerous spikes in blood pressure. There is a very interesting issue regarding this increase in blood pressure in the morning. The problem isn't the medication, but rather what the person does to this body, which, as I've already explained, is often more accelerated than that of someone who doesn't have these related issues. And then we get to coffee, because many people believe that black coffee, of course, the little cup of coffee you drink, can automatically be bad for your blood pressure. But the situation isn't as simple as we might think, because coffee actually contains interesting compounds, including antioxidants and polyphenols. For many people, moderate coffee consumption is not the main problem. The issue is the context in which that coffee is consumed. It's important for us to be aware of that, because think about a situation where someone slept poorly, already wakes up tired, stressed, running late with that cortisol spike, and then drinks a very strong coffee early in the morning. There are people who need a bucket of coffee just to wake up because they're so tired. And sometimes people add sugar to their coffee. There's white bread, cookies, ham, margarine for breakfast, sugary cereal, ultra-processed foods, bacon, all sorts of things, right? These are things people sometimes eat for breakfast as part of their daily routine. We know this happens. So what happens then? The body ends up receiving several rather harmful stimuli all at once. So more adrenaline, more activation of the sympathetic nervous system, more quickly glucose, more insulin, more sodium, more fluid retention. It's almost like hitting the gas when your car is already speeding down the highway. So, in people whose bodies are in a state of imbalance, in a state of inequality, what happens? For those who are sensitive to caffeine, this can indeed lead to palpitations, anxiety, constricted blood vessels, and increased blood pressure. This doesn't mean that everyone with high blood pressure needs to stop drinking coffee. There are people who can always tolerate moderate amounts. The problem is excessive coffee, fasting, poor sleep, and anxiety that can come along with an inflammatory eating pattern. So, to determine whether you will need to cut out or strictly control the amount of coffee you have in the morning or not, you need to talk to your doctor or your nutritionist there in your city. Remember that this video is purely informational, but now you know that depending on how much coffee you drink in the morning, it can be an additional factor that may raise your blood pressure. There's an issue that's very important for us to talk about because when we talk about breakfast and blood pressure, people think about coffee. But I want you to start thinking that many times the problem with breakfast isn't actually the coffee itself, as we just mentioned. Rather, it's the excess sugar, sodium, and an imbalance in other good nutrients like potassium, for example. Because more and more people have been developing the habit of consuming ultra-processed foods at breakfast, right? I gave the example of bacon and ham, but there are people who buy ready-made savory snacks, buy sugary cereals, buy processed foods, white bread, mortadella, sausage, salami, margarine, cookies, a lot of processed, ultra-processed stuff. And we know that this can create a harsh environment for blood vessels because it's a lot of sodium, a lot of refined carbohydrates, a lot of sugar, glucose spikes, insulin spikes, fluid retention. So at breakfast, right, it's a lot for the body to process all at once. So be careful with ultra-processed foods because they often hide a lot of sodium and a lot of sugar. Even if they're not necessarily sweet or super salty, sometimes they mask it by adding citric acid to sweet foods to reduce that excessive sweetness. So the industry does this to make us believe that the food isn't that bad after all. So remember to take a look at the label. I have a video explaining how not to be fooled by the label. I'll leave it down here if you want to learn more details about this. And try to have a good source of potassium for breakfast. Avocado is fantastic for breakfast. Dark chocolate with 100% cocoa, coconut water. Bananas themselves, if you eat them with chia or natural yogurt, are a great option for when you need more potassium. Because potassium, there's a sodium-potassium pump in our body, and when we consume more potassium from food, it draws out the sodium that was inside the cell, carries the excess water, and helps eliminate it through urine. So it helps reduce swelling and decrease the excess sodium in our body. It's wonderful. Now, I need to make a note regarding coffee consumption at the same time that you take your blood pressure medication, because depending on the type of blood pressure medicine you take, if you consume both at the same time, coffee can somewhat impair the absorption of this medication due to the change in pH that coffee causes. It acidifies our body's pH because of the tannins present, which can bind to these structures and reduce absorption, and even due to the change in intestinal transit that coffee causes as it speeds up transit, potentially shortening the time. And then the medication passes through the intestinal mucosa, reducing its absorption. So ideally, if you are going to drink coffee, you should leave some time between taking the medication and having your coffee. And usually doctors say that the ideal is to wait 30 minutes to 1 hour to ensure that everything is well absorbed. Besides that, we know there are other things that can also hinder the absorption of the medication, right? Like certain types of medication, even if you can take them together. Some types of antacids, proton pump inhibitors, certain anti-inflammatories, depending on the medication you take at the same time as your blood pressure medicine, it can interfere with the absorption of that medication. So, since blood pressure medication is something you'll be taking every day, if you need to start taking another medication for something like gastritis or inflammation, it's a good idea to tell the doctor who prescribed that medication that you're already taking blood pressure medicine and ask if there's any kind of interaction or not, so they can organize it properly. Regarding any other medications you might need to take for a period of time, right? This is to ensure that both will be good for your health. I ended up saying that coffee changes the body's pH, but actually it changes the stomach's pH because it's acidic. But I think you got the idea. It's also worth mentioning the relationship between excessive consumption of foods rich in sugar and its effect on the endothelium, the lining of the blood vessels, right? Sometimes we forget about this because insulin resistance that often happen when we consume a lot of sugar, a lot of bread, a lot of pasta, excessive glucose intake, excessive insulin production, the body ends up becoming more and more resistant to this insulin, right? And this can happen especially in people who are obese, pre-diabetic, or have fatty liver. So the endothelium, which is a thin layer lining the blood vessels, produces nitric oxide, which is essential for vasodilation. But when we have hyperglycemia, this excess sugar in the blood, inflammation, ultra-processed foods, and poor sleep, it can gradually harm the health of the endothelium over the years. So these vessels, when more inflamed and rigid, may respond worse in the morning. This is a very important point. So just taking the medication won't be enough to control your blood pressure. Obviously, medication is extremely important. I'm not trying to say here in this video that medication doesn't matter. Medication is very important. Medication is a real game changer, and it truly helps thousands of people every day to avoid more serious problems with blood pressure, strokes, heart attacks, and so on. What I'm trying to tell you is that you can't put all your hopes in medication while having a poor diet, poor sleep, drinking too much alcohol, smoking, and not exercising. Controlling blood pressure is a more holistic issue within our body. All of this needs to be monitored by your doctor, your nutritionist, or the professional who knows you and follows your case in your city. Medication is extremely important, but having a healthy lifestyle and good nutrition is also essential for you. Always remember that. I have a playlist here with lots of tips for heart health, arteries, and blood pressure. I'll leave it down below. Let me know down below if you already take medication for blood pressure, if you're about to start taking it now, or if you already knew about these breakfast tips. I would love to see your comment. Remember to like the video because that really helps me, and share it with those who will like it and those who need it. Let's expand our chain of kindness because that's what I want here with the channel. See you next time. Bye.